The quiet of a sanctuary is meant to be absolute, a refuge from the chaotic noise of the outside world. It is a space carved out for reflection, for community, and for peace. But when that silence is shattered by the crack of a firearm, the transgression feels far more profound than a mere crime. It feels like a desecration. The breaking news out of Salt Lake City is grim, and the details are harrowing. According to reports from Fox News, a shooting outside a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has left at least 2 people dead and 6 others wounded. Police have secured the scene, ribbons of yellow tape are fluttering in the wind, and a community is left reeling, asking the inevitable question regarding why here and why now. But we are not here today to simply recount the tragic ticker of casualties or to offer platitudes. We are here to look behind the curtain of this event. We are here to analyze the systemic failures, the intelligence gaps, and the terrifying vulnerability of soft targets in modern society. Our mission is to peel back the layers of breaking news to reveal the geopolitical, security, and societal mechanics that drive these events. Today, we are asking a question that makes many uneasy. In an era of increasing polarization and asymmetric aggression, is the concept of a safe haven obsolete? Are our houses of worship becoming the new front lines of an undeclared domestic conflict? To understand the gravity of this incident, we must first contextualize the geography and the history. Salt Lake City is not just another metropolitan area in the American West. It is the spiritual and administrative capital of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. For millions of believers, this city represents a Zion, a place established by pioneers fleeing brutal persecution in the 19th century. The history of the LDS Church is steeped in a narrative of survival against mob hostility and state-sanctioned oppression. From their expulsion from Missouri to the martyrdom of their founder in Illinois, the church has a long institutional memory of physical danger. This history has cultivated a culture that is uniquely vigilant, organized, and deeply protective of its community. Therefore, an attack in Salt Lake City, directly outside a ward or stake center, carries a symbolic weight that transcends the immediate bloodshed. It strikes at the heart of the church's perceived safety in its own stronghold. We must also understand the definition of the environment. In security parlance, a church is classified as a soft target. Unlike a military base, an airport, or a government building, which are hard targets protected by layered defenses, access controls, and armed personnel, a church is designed to be porous. The theology demands openness. The doors are meant to be unlocked to the stranger. This theological imperative creates a tactical nightmare for security planners. The very attribute that makes a church, its welcoming nature, is the exact vulnerability that attackers exploit. Let us transition into a deep dive analysis of the security and intelligence dimensions of this event. When we analyze a shooting of this magnitude, we must look at the timeline left of boom. In intelligence terms, left of boom refers to the period before the explosion or the attack occurs. This is the domain of prevention, threat assessment, and behavioral analysis. Most mass casualty events are not impulsive snaps. They are the culmination of a pathway to aggression. There is almost always leakage. Leakage occurs when a perpetrator unintentionally reveals their intent to a third party, often through social media manifestos, comments to coworkers, or erratic behavior patterns. The investigation into this Salt Lake City shooting will inevitably turn to the digital footprint of the assailant. We have to ask if this was an intelligence failure. In the modern surveillance state, where algorithms track consumer behavior with frightening accuracy, how do individuals mobilizing for aggression slip through the net? We are seeing a trend where the signal-to-noise ratio is too high for law enforcement to manage. There is so much hateful rhetoric, so much digital noise, that identifying the one individual who intends to move from keyboard warrior to kinetic actor is becoming the search for a needle in a stack of needles. Furthermore, we must analyze the tactical response. The report indicates 2 dead and 6 wounded. In the grim calculus of active shooter scenarios, the casualty count is a function of time. The clock starts when the first round is fired and stops when the threat is neutralized. The gap between those 2 moments is defined by the preparedness of the civilians present and the response time of law enforcement. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is known for its organizational efficiency. In recent years, many religious institutions have begun implementing quiet security protocols. This includes designated ushers who are trained in situational awareness, trauma care, and sometimes concealed carry. We must examine whether such protocols were in place here and whether they mitigated the death toll or if the element of surprise was total. We must also consider the weaponization of ideology. While the specific motive in this case may still be under investigation, we cannot ignore the broader trend of targeted attacks against religious institutions across the United States. From the tragedy at the Sikh temple in Wisconsin, to the massacre at the Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, to the slaughter at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, and the shooting at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, there is a clear pattern. These are not random acts of criminal brutality. They are often acts of domestic extremism intended to send a message to a specific demographic. They are designed to instill fear, to disrupt the free exercise of religion, and to fracture social cohesion. This brings us to the political and legislative dimension. Every time an event like this occurs, the political machinery grinds into motion, often retreating into entrenched partisan camps before the crime scene tape is even removed. We will see the familiar debate regarding gun control laws versus mental health funding. However, from a security analysis perspective, we must look beyond the legislation and look at the operational reality. We are living in a country with more firearms than people and a mental health infrastructure that has been systematically hollowed out over decades. The intersection of these two realities creates a volatile compound. The Salt Lake City incident also highlights the complex relationship between private security and public law enforcement. As police departments across the country face staffing shortages and budget constraints, the burden of protection is increasingly shifting to the private sector and to the citizens themselves. Religious organizations are now hiring private security firms, installing surveillance networks that rival small casinos, and training their clergy in active shooter response. We are witnessing the privatization of public safety. This shift raises profound questions about the social contract. If the state cannot guarantee the safety of citizens in their places of worship, the legitimacy of the state's monopoly on force begins to erode. Let us evaluate the impact and potential scenarios moving forward. The immediate impact is, of course, the grief and trauma of the families involved. But the second-order effects will ripple outward. We can anticipate a short-term hardening of targets. Churches, mosques, and synagogues in the region, and perhaps nationally, will likely increase their visible security posture. We may see armed police officers stationed outside Sunday services, bag checks at the doors, and the installation of panic buttons in pulpits. However, this leads to a negative scenario, which is the fortress mentality. If our community centers become fortresses, do they lose their essential character? If a parishioner must pass through a metal detector to pray, has the extremist already won by changing our way of life? There is a delicate balance between prudent security and paranoia. The challenge for church leadership is to implement security measures that are effective but unobtrusive, maintaining the sanctity of the space while hardening the perimeter. Another potential scenario involves the copycat phenomenon. Criminologists have long documented the replication effect of mass shootings. Media coverage, while essential for information, often inadvertently provides a script for future attackers. The notoriety gained by the perpetrator can inspire other marginalized, radicalized individuals to seek similar infamy. This places a heavy burden on the media to report responsibly, focusing on the victims and the heroism of first responders rather than the manifesto or the image of the killer. We must also consider the geopolitical angle, however distant it may seem. Acts of domestic instability in the United States are closely monitored by foreign adversaries. Narrative warfare is a key component of modern statecraft. Propagandists in adversarial nations will seize upon this tragedy to paint a picture of an America in decline, a chaotic and brutal society where the government cannot protect its people. This narrative is used to undermine American soft power abroad and to justify authoritarian measures in their own countries. They will argue that freedom and the Second Amendment lead only to bloodshed, presenting their own restrictive systems as the only path to safety. Conversely, there is a positive scenario, one of resilience and adaptation. The LDS community is renowned for its cohesion. In the wake of this tragedy, we will likely see a massive mobilization of support, not just in thoughts and prayers, but in logistics, counseling, and financial aid. This resilience is a deterrent in itself. It demonstrates that while aggression can kill individuals, it cannot kill the community. We may also see this tragedy spurring a new wave of interfaith cooperation on security matters. We could see the formation of information-sharing coalitions between churches, synagogues, and mosques, where threat intelligence is pooled and best practices are shared. This collective defense model is far more effective than individual silos of security. Furthermore, this event forces us to reevaluate the concept of the insider threat versus the outsider threat. The initial report states the shooting was outside the church. This distinction is critical. Securing the interior is one challenge, but securing the periphery, the parking lots, the sidewalks, the approach routes, is entirely different. This is the domain of environmental design. We may see a push for better lighting, the removal of visual obstructions, and the control of traffic flow to create defensible space. Urban planning and architectural design will become integral components of counter-extremism strategies for religious institutions. Let us also look at the role of technology. We are entering an era of predictive policing and AI-driven surveillance. There are systems currently in development that can detect a firearm on a security camera feed and alert authorities before a shot is fired. There are acoustic sensors that can triangulate gunfire instantly. The integration of these technologies into soft targets is inevitable. However, this brings us back to the privacy debate. How much surveillance are we willing to accept in our sacred spaces? Are we willing to have our faces scanned and our license plates read every time we go to worship? This is the trade-off of the 21st century, which is privacy for security. Comparing this to historical precedents, we can look at the periods of intense sectarian strife in Northern Ireland or the security situation for Jewish communities in Europe. In those contexts, high security became a normalized part of religious life. It was tragic, but it allowed life to continue. The American experience has largely been free of this level of persistent threat, but that era of innocence appears to be ending. We are moving toward a European model of high-security religious practice, necessitating a cultural shift in how Americans view their Sunday mornings. In conclusion, the shooting in Salt Lake City is a tragedy that demands more than just mourning. It demands a rigorous analysis of our vulnerabilities. We have dissected the tension between the open door and the secure perimeter. We have looked at the intelligence failures that allow leakage to go undetected. We have examined the privatization of security and the weaponization of ideology. The death of two individuals is a stark reminder that the threat landscape is evolving. The sanctuary is no longer a sanctuary by default. It must be made a sanctuary by design and by vigilance. The implications of this event are clear. We cannot rely solely on law enforcement to be omnipresent. The responsibility for safety is becoming decentralized. It falls upon community leaders, ushers, and congregants to be the eyes and ears of their own defense. This is not a call to take the law into one's own hands, but a call to situational awareness. We must learn to recognize the signs of danger before they manifest as kinetic aggression. We must bridge the gap between mental health intervention and physical security. The path forward requires a multi-layered approach. It requires intelligence agencies to get better at filtering the signal from the noise. It requires architects to design safer spaces. It requires politicians to address the root causes of radicalism and brutality. And it requires us, the public, to remain resilient in the face of fear. We must refuse to be intimidated into isolation. We must continue to gather, to worship, and to build community, but we must do so with our eyes open. This is a developing story, and the investigation will reveal more details in the coming days. We will learn about the motive, the weapon, and the missed opportunities to stop this attack. But the lesson is already written in the yellow tape surrounding that church in Salt Lake City. Security is not a product you buy. It is a process you live. It is fragile, and it must be constantly maintained. I urge you to think about the spaces you inhabit. Think about the security of your own community. Are you prepared? Is your organization prepared? Do not let this news cycle pass without taking a moment to assess your own readiness. Discuss this with your families and your community leaders. Ignoring the threat does not make it disappear. It only makes it more dangerous.